to Ask a Process Worker, where we respond to your questions from a process-oriented perspective. Here comes the question. My mom is emotionally immature, nothing extreme, general neglect and selfishness. I tried to work it out in my 20s. We went to therapy, had some confrontations. It didn't go well. Now I'm 33 and I've mostly accepted her, but I get these waves of resentment and find myself not wanting to spend much time with her. When we're together, it doesn't feel like intimacy. It feels like I'm playing a role that she wants and that keeps me safe. She always wants more time with me. How can I come to more forgiveness and acceptance? Or is it worth trying to work it out again? So, first of all, I just want to say that I'm sorry about the difficulty that you're having with your mother. It's always very challenging to have that kind of tension with a relationship that is as important as your mother. So that is not easy. So the fact that you are wondering whether or not it's worth it to try again sounds to me like that is pointing to you having different parts, right? One part that longs to maybe reconnect and see what's possible and longs for that kind of real intimacy and connection with your mother. And another part that maybe feels hopeless about it or just despondent or has given up. And I think it's really useful to start there. So begin with just exploring the different parts, the different voices in you, and what's going on there. What might feel right about the distance? What becomes possible for you in that distance? And what part of you longs for something more? What might intimacy with your mother, if it would be the kind of intimacy you actually crave, what would that look like? What would that be like? And who in you has given up? What feels easier about playing that role, and how is it keeping you safe? Like, I would explore that more. And what exactly didn't go well the last time in your 20s? There might be things to learn from that you could apply now. And if you were to lose that sense of safety that you have now, right? Even if it's through a role, what would that mean? What would that entail? And what would maybe create safety for you in having that conversation? So in other words, I think there's a bunch of inner work to do first that I think will set you up for success. So I wouldn't just dive right in. I would do that first. And I think that the unpacking itself will show you what the right direction is for you that feels most aligned, right? Whether it's to really grieve the loss of what you wanted to have and can't have, and really the letting go. Or maybe to drop the role and speak your truth, irrespective, kind of a reclamation, right, of your voice, irrespective of how your mother reacts, or to really invest in the repair. I would unpack your inner dilemmas and then see which of those directions feel like they have real kind of energy and power for you, kind of pull you, right? Personally, since you asked the question, I will also answer it. My sense is that it's worth trying again, but only if that matches your own inner exploration. And here's why I feel that. You were in your 20s when you first tried. I think now being in your 30s, you have a different level of awareness. You have a different ability also to communicate. And I think that can make a massive difference. Also, I'm hearing that your mother is invested in the relationship. So she wants the relationship, right? She wants to spend time with you. So I think that also gives a kind of foundation to work from. And I think that the fact that you're asking the question might also give an indication that it's a good direction to try again. Because if it was completely hopeless, you probably wouldn't even be wondering, like, is it worth it, right? But that's not necessarily true. You know, check in with yourself how that lands for you, but that is my sense. As for the forgiveness piece, well, I feel you. I feel your longing in the background of that wish, right? And I think that is useful to explore when you do that piece of inner work, right? Like what would forgiveness bring you? How would that change the way you relate to her? How would that change your inner state? I think that is a useful exploration and possible direction, you know, for you to relate more from that place with her. However, in my experience, you cannot fabricate forgiveness. It's like an organic outcome. It's something that happens because of a process of either reconciliation or grieving and letting go, but you can't like make forgiveness happen, you know? So if you decide to try again with your mother, paradoxically, I would zoom in on your resentment. So instead of trying to overcome your resentment, I would go deeper there and explore your resentment, because resentment often holds our places of like unresolved pain and also anger. And anger, if it's channeled in a certain way, can be a very powerful force. We can use our anger in destructive ways, but we can also use our anger as a kind of staying power, because we feel so strongly about something that we really want to stand for something. So it's a kind of fire that you can use. And I think that could be really useful if you decide to go back in, because you're asking in a way of your mother to emotionally grow up, right? To be more mature in how she responds to you and how she meets those places of hurt inside you. And that's a very mature act. And that hasn't been possible until now, which means there are some barriers in the way. And staying with those barriers and not just, and this is now for you, not just giving up and reverting back into your old role, which is often a tendency when we meet the barrier, right? That there's something in us that goes like, oh yeah, this is just pointless. I'm just giving up here. I'll just play the role, right? That tendency will likely come up when you hit the barrier. So having a little bit of that fire of like, no, but these are the things I feel really strongly about and I want to stand for them, right? So it's not about acting out that anger or lashing out at her, but it's about standing for the thing you want to stand for. And that takes a certain oomph, that takes a little bit of like power, inner power. So we could say that this situation asks for a kind of maturity from her, but also from you, in the sense of really standing for the thing you want to stand and, stepping out of the game, basically. And that's also a mature act. It's a capacity that usually we develop over time. Most of us aren't born with that. We kind of develop it through having worked through conflict, really. And as I say that, I also just want to note that it's a tricky ask, because when there's an immature parent, I should go like this, the child tends to become the mature one, right? To carry the relationship in a certain way. And so saying to you like, well, the situation is in a way asking also a kind of maturity from you, can kind of activate that whole program. So I want to be very clear that that is a different thing. That's a different dynamic. That is you silencing yourself in order to keep the peace, not rock the boat, not touch on those possibly emotional, conflictual spaces, right? And like you say, playing the role you think she wants you to play. And in a way, that is you carrying the relationship, we could say, right? This is a very different process. This is actually you centering yourself more, centering your needs, your wants, your truth. So that's kind of the opposite of silencing yourself. So obviously this is not a new pattern between you, right? This is pretty kind of ingrained. So I would recommend getting support with it. Once you decide, I would get support with it. I think it needs a strong container. And I also want to say, if you decide not to work it out with your mother in the sense of having a direct one-on-one or with a third-party conversation, there are other ways. I have seen in my practice sometimes miraculous changes happening by one person doing their inner work and changing their stance in the relationship without having a direct one-on-one conversation. I have also experienced sometimes dynamics resolving, when the person has passed. I have experienced that in my own relationship with one of my parents. I don't feel that's not where you're at, but I also don't think you're at the place of just doing your inner work and, not having the conversation. I think there's a real possibility here for the two of you. But I just want to name that, there are many different paths, and having a conversation is not the only one. So I'm rooting for you and your mother, and I hope that you find a pathway, however that's going to look, to more connection and intimacy in your relationship together.